Now it's our turn to, sorry for the words, but put our balls on the table.
Remember, kids, this is not how you play hockey. It's just ugly.
I like it.
Screw you guys. I'm doing this.
You know what? I love ice cream too.
Go back to Canada, Guy Lafleur.
Game on!
Yeah, game on.
Hello, and welcome into the hockey show right here on Mile High Sports, Colorado's biggest and best live hockey radio show. JJ Jerez here of Mile High Sports, and Ryan Bolding is taking his sweet time to get into the studio today. Ryan Bolding of NHL.com. He'll be here, I would guess, in about 4 or 5 minutes, so I'm going to do my best to tap dance for you a little bit and run this show by myself until he gets here. We've got a lot to talk about today. Of course, the situation going on in Vancouver and the coaching up there, the Avalanche back in the winner's circle, which is good to see. We're going to talk a little bit injuries around the NHL. Of course, the Ivan Provorov situation that really took over the NHL over the past week. And, the mixed bag skate, like we always do, have some fun at the end of the show. Fun to see the Avalanche back in the winner's circle. What a difference the week makes, right? Now, Avalanche have spit off 4 wins in a row after a lot of people in Avalanche land were counting them for dead. They said, you know what? This team might not make the playoffs. Let's just tie it up and wait for next season, see what happens. So good to see them get some wins. Good to see them do it in the fashion that they've been doing it in as well, right? They had 2 almost blowout wins there at home. You score 3 early against Calgary, and then your goal scoring kind of disappears. So credit to the defensive game that they played there in Calgary. And then Vancouver was some revenge. They needed revenge against Vancouver. Not too long ago, the Avalanche were playing in Vancouver, and the Vancouver Canucks came back from a 3-1 deficit and kind of embarrassed the Avalanche there during their slide. Avalanche later that week went on to lose to Chicago, and ever since then, everything's been back on track. So it'll be fun to get into the Colorado Avalanche here with Ryan once he shows up. But they win in Vancouver last night, hop back into a playoff spot, jump over Calgary. So good to see them back there as well. And just good to see some of the depth performing. Here's a little fun fact. We got the All-Star game coming up in 1 week's time. The Avalanche have 4 games in between then, 3 of which are at home. Next week they have a 3-game homestand leading into the 10-day break heading into the All-Star game. And then 16 home games remain after that. That's not very many. Right? It's a couple months still, but the playoffs are here. They're going to be here sooner than we think. So, gear up for the run that's gonna come from the Avalanche, because now's go time, right? Like I said, that Chicago Blackhawks game was the wake-up call. Now it's time for them to move forward and just start accumulating all the wins they can. Hopefully some players start to trickle back. As we heard this past week, Danny, Cale Makar missing some action. So definitely something to keep an eye on, and we'll get Ryan's opinion from there.
We had actually talked about that on Afternoon Drive, and the conversation was kind of, I know the Avs are injured and they need everybody they have, but does Cale Makar maybe need to get a little bit of a rest with all the usage he's been getting, because his ice time is way up this season?
Not only is it way up, it was insane for a second there, Danny. And you talked to Cale Makar after the game, and he takes it with a grain of salt, and he takes it with a great attitude, right? He says, those are the minutes I'm going to be getting when you're playing from behind every single game. And that was exactly the situation, right? The third period, the Avalanche were scratching and clawing, trying to get back into these games. So yeah, you're going to put your best players out there to try to get you back into them. And they fell short, which is where it stings. But when the Avalanche have that kind of usage, and then, the comeback happens, which we've known the Avalanche to do here and there, it's nothing to worry about. But of course, I can't leave you guys hanging. The matinee money pick for today. There's, of course, 14 games going on right now, one of which started at 10:30. Those stinkers at the NHL like to hit us with those early games on Saturdays, which, good thing or a bad thing. But my matinee money pick for today is the next game coming up here, as Ryan waddles his way into the studio here. The next game coming up, Tampa Bay against Calgary Flames at 1 o'clock. I'm going the over on that game. Trying to keep it simple, get us back in the winner's circle just like the Avalanche, because our matinee money picks, I think, have failed the last 2 weeks. 2023, we've come up dry. But Ryan, welcome in.
Do you think Calgary is capable of scoring multiple goals in that game.
I do, because that's their style of game, right? I understand your thought process here because they're going up against one of the league's best goaltenders, but I think Calgary has to rely on high offensive potency because that's the only way they've been getting wins this year. Their goaltending hasn't been spectacular. Honestly, nothing Calgary has done has been spectacular, but I see
disappointing season from them.
Yeah, I see two pretty strong offenses in that game, and the Saturday afternoon game's a little bit different. No morning skates, you throw off your routine. Everybody's in a different headspace.
Yeah, I looked at that, and a couple thoughts went through my head. The first one was, and sorry I'm late, by the way.
It's okay. Did you listen to my intro?
I did. In between it getting cut with what is it? Hurt So Good by John Cougar Mellencamp.
Yeah, that classic rock station from down south sneaks through.
I was like, am I driving next to some old white dude in a car who's just using one of those FM broadcasters through a cigarette plug? Just blasting. I was like, of course it's John Cougar Mellencamp too. It was pretty good. I jumped out of the car at Cale Makar. So that's what I heard. But my first thought when I saw your matinee money note was, is this going to be a blowout? And do we get over 6 goals that way on the Tampa side of things? Or is this just going to be one of those games that's like 3-2 and that's it? Because I don't know that Calgary really on average is scoring at a clip to do that. I know, a 4-3 game gets you there. However, I don't know. It seemed risky with me. And to go back to it, I was on Sportsnet radio in Calgary before the Avs game previewing it, and you try to tiptoe around the fact that the team is not the team from last year. They're not performing the way they should. It's weird.
The Flames, you mean?
Yeah. Calgary. Their goaltending hasn't been what you expect of it. Right. Obviously Kadri was having a career year, a lifetime achievement year with the Avalanche last year, but he has not been as good for Calgary there. Yep,
and they just got skipped by the Colorado Avalanche for that last playoff spot. So we'll see how Calgary reacts, but like I said, it's go time for a lot of teams. The season's going to be over a lot sooner than we realize, and now's the time that people have to really kick into gear. I was excited to get into this conversation with you, Ryan, so for the final 5 minutes or so of this segment, let's talk about Bruce Boudreau. Of course, the Avalanche in Vancouver last night, kind of getting first-hand look at the chaos that's going on with the coaching situation in Vancouver, right? Of course, Rick Tocchet expected to step in any time. I think the real holdup there, it sounds like, is Rick Tocchet had to give Turner Sports the proper notice to leave that position so they could fill it. You've seen him trying out some guys here, right? I saw Henrik Lundqvist on TNT last week, just crushing it. I'm excited to see who they fill that spot with. But poor Bruce Boudreau, you can't help but feel bad for him. He gets emotional in the pregame yesterday, and it almost feels like all hockey fans everywhere are just feeling grandpa-ish feelings for a sad Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah, I think to take a step back from it, you look at what he did for that Vancouver team when he took over, right? They went on a 14-game run where they had points. They obviously didn't. I don't think they won 14 straight, but they went on this miraculous run. The fans are coming up with a chant for them. Imagine the good feelings that are coming out of that. And then the season starts the way last season started, low. You've got the management BS going on there where, we're not going to sign JT Miller. We're going to wait on it. We're going to do whatever. We're not going to offer him a contract. Oh, now we changed our mind. We're going to offer him a contract. What's going on with Bo Horvat? Oh, we don't know. Are we rebuilding? Are we not rebuilding? You've got weird stuff going on with the owner locally there, lawsuits and weird things going on. It's just a dumpster fire in Vancouver. And here you have this coach with a legacy of success, with a legacy of being one of the better people in the league, trying to just coach the team. And your approach to handling we need a coaching change is to leak that you're going to hire someone else like Rick Tocchet and then just let this guy, float in the wind here and have to answer questions about it and nothing's coming out, somebody leaked rumors, and then there's this whole awkwardness with Rick Tocchet on television, and then everybody seems to think it's going to be Rick Tocchet there, and meanwhile Bruce is out here still trying to coach. Imagine how hard it was to coach that game yesterday, knowing it's one thing if it's been a bad year. My contract is up and it's not going to be renewed. But it's another thing if it's the middle of the season, you're like, I could get fired any day. Ha, let's go out and win, boys.
Yeah, definitely. And that trickles down to the players too, right? That energy. I mean, you didn't really see much fight out of the Vancouver Canucks at all.
And that's a team that should be getting up to play the Avalanche. Like they had beat the Avalanche twice. They're one of the few teams in the league that had beat the Avalanche twice this year. And the other thing for me is you started to see this outpouring of support from media, hockey media, across the country and Canada. All of these people saying, what Vancouver's doing to this man is shameless. He's such a good guy. I have had relatively few interactions with him as a coach in my life, and they've all been good. He's one of the good people. He's personable. He's someone that will have conversations with you before scrum starts about what's going on, like accessible. And I mean, his hockey legacy goes back. He is in the movie Slapshot. He's in it.
Yeah.
He's just one of the better people. And so to see somebody get dragged like that, it just sucks. It's the ugly side of the sport. And I get the business aspect and the need for wins and whatever's going on, but you cannot look at that organization and think this is the coach's problem solely.
Well, and that's if you're Rick Tocchet, you can't look at the situation and the opportunity and say, I'm stepping into something good here. There's obviously some toxicity around the front office and the ownership, like you brought up. They are obvious sellers here coming up at the near trade deadline. And what kind of team, what kind of roster are you going to be left with? Not only this season, but for years to come. So is it now your responsibility to coach a rebuild? That doesn't sound like a opportunity I would be jumping at if I'm Rick Tocchet. It sounds like just a big mess for any coach, let alone a coach with experience and talent like Rick Tocchet has.
Well, I mean, he might be the only guy qualified to coach this team after all the years he suffered in the desert down there with bad Arizona teams.
It's an upgrade for him, in all honesty, isn't it?
It's crazy because I think Jim Rutherford is a good GM. But whatever the situation is going on there, it's just crazy. And it's unfortunate that it has to be this way. Like, if you're making a business decision about coaching, make the decision and be done with it.
Yep, Bruce Boudreau definitely has turned himself into the NHL sweetheart, and you could tell he's got a sweet soul, and everybody's kind of watching out for his emotions right now and just how he's handling things. But I'm happy. Hopefully, he jumps right back onto NHL Network like he was before he took the Vancouver job, because he was great there, and I'll be excited to watch him there. And
he'll be
have his
reunited
feelings
with
spared.
Devin Dubnyk, Avs legend, Devin Dubnyk,
and close friend of the show, Jackie Redmond, almost close to the show.
Well, Lauren Gardner was on with Dubnyk the other day. She's a friend of the show.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Well, that'll do it. We're going to get into the Avalanche win streak and what has changed among that squad. So stick with us here through the break. This is the Hockey Show on Mile High Sports. Hey, be our first caller. 303-831-1340. That'll be fun to hear from you. Get your take on the Avalanche and what's going on, or just say hi or shame Ryan for being late to today's show.
I was almost our first caller today. I thought about calling in, but I didn't know if my phone call would be disrupted by John Cougar Mellencamp.
Well, let's let 2 Chainz take us out. We'll be back through the break. This is the Hockey Show. Mile High Sports.
Right now, it's 16 minutes past the big hour. Is that not right, Mr. Scream? Great, good stuff. I think people are getting really cranked.
Welcome back to the Hockey Show, Colorado's biggest and best live hockey radio show. JJ Derez, Ryan Bolding of NHL.com to break down some more hockey news. We're sticking to the Colorado Avalanche in this segment here because, like I said in the opening segment, first of all, that was fun. Thanks for giving me the little challenge that was a 5-minute soliloquy.
Nice. Nice use. How did you feel that you did?
I feel like I did pretty well. I've always wondered how I would do in a situation like that. I've never really had to be in it, but as hockey fans, we all love Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman, and I listen to the Jeff Merrick podcast even for his own radio show, and he does that kind of stuff all the time. So I'm always like, I wonder how I could do. I mean, looking even at Sandy Clough, he's the reason I fell in love with radio, to be honest with you. I was at Brooklyn's maybe back in 98, 99, something like that, and he was doing a post-game show from there all by himself, and I'm like, wow, the ability of this guy to just talk in a crowded bar with tons of noise around him, just stay on topic, stay coherent, and almost have a conversation with himself. Has always wondered if that was something I could do. I think I did okay. I'll give myself an A-.
Yeah, I definitely don't feel like that's something I could do. Like, just at some point, you want a breather. You want somebody to break in, add something. I just feel like it's then me just agreeing with myself. I'm like, man, I'm so right about everything.
There's a guy on NHL.com, or not NHL.com, on SiriusXM, the NHL radio, and when he has conversations with himself, he's a lot like Jim Gaffigan, right? Well, he'll throw in another person's voice to act like they're arguing with him. Like, oh, well, you say that this is the case. Well, what do you think about this? Well, I'll tell you what I think about this. I think it
nice. Yeah, we definitely. My takeaway from the last couple weeks is we need to do more voices.
Oh, I'm with that. I like voices. I always try them out. You look at me funny, but let's get to the Avalanche. Back in the winner's circle, like I pointed out, 4 victories in a row. Not only that, 4 really strong victories, right? They weren't squeaking out. They weren't, hey, let's find a way to win. Let's dig deep, kind of like they were early in December, where we're all like, how are they pulling these wins together? How are they squeaking these out? These were testament wins, in my opinion. Obviously, some big wins last week, a shutout. I forgot Francouz let one in there late. But what would you say has switched? What happened to the Avalanche that suddenly they went from a team losing to the Vancouver Canucks, losing to the Chicago Blackhawks, to suddenly being back in the playoff, back on everybody's radar, and not a single person out there will tell you they think the Avalanche are missing the playoffs?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, but whatever was going on in the minds of the hearts and minds of the top 2 superstar-ish quality level players has sorted itself out. You've got Arturi Lehkonen is on one. Mikko Rantanen had that downturn. He's back. Nathan MacKinnon is doing Nathan MacKinnon things. When they announced the All-Star Game voted in players, I was like, wow, how did Nathan MacKinnon get in there? But you look, he's second on the team with 51 points. He's tied for second on the team in goals with 13. He's first on the team in assists with 38. Like, he's quietly come back into it, turned it on. I think that's a driving factor for this. The Avalanche have now gone back to being lethal. And when they weren't scoring and times were tough, they weren't dangerous. They weren't lethal. You didn't feel like you had to cover everybody as tight as you needed to. So on the one hand, you got all these guys back and playing. On the other hand, now you lose Cale Makar for 2 games. You hope it's not going to be for much longer than that. But you've been able to fill the void just like you did without McKinnon early, like with all of these injuries early on. Val Nichushkin, I think, does a lot for this team just physically. He can drive to the net if he needs to. We saw it in the Canucks game, I think. In the Canucks game, somebody went in with him and tried to take him out into the net, and the Canucks defenseman was on top of his goalie in the net, and Nichushkin was just standing there bent over. Like, he's a big, physically imposing dude that's hard to knock down and can score. We saw him score in tight spaces last year. We saw him score shooters goals. Like, he can do all of those things. And so now that adds another element to it as well. But when I was on the radio in Calgary, I was like, guys to watch: Lehkonen, Cogliano, Comfer, Rantanen. I mean, all of those guys had an impact on that game, but Lehkonen is like this guy who just leaps out. He's like, here's 2 goals, and I'll disappear for a game. Here's 2 goals.
In this 4-game win streak, Arturi Lehkonen has 5 goals to his name, and that's the difference maker right there. Not Arturi Lehkonen, so to speak, but the support, right? There was so long where you're seeing only Cale Makar, only Mikko Rantanen, only Nathan MacKinnon chipping in goals. Now you've got Arturi Lehkonen with 5. You've got Nichushkin chipping in. You got Cogliano chipping in. You had Newhook pop off a few last week. You have the support, and that's all it takes. You need some more guys to score goals. You can't just count on the power play for the whole season. You can't just count on the top line. And like Jared Bednar says, you insert a guy like Val Nichushkin in the lineup, well, it has a trickle-down effect, right? Because now you have a guy that has played some top-line minutes, bolstering the bottom of the lineup, so on and so forth. A guy who shouldn't even be in the lineup back as a scratcher back in Loveland. So, yeah, getting those guys back obviously helps big time, but having your support guys support.
Yeah, that's the important thing. I feel like we've been talking about it a lot. If we look at just goals on the Avalanche, right? 10 players have more than 5 goals. That's obviously Mikko, Arturi, Kale, Nathan, Evan Rodriguez, Newhook, Comfort, Nichushkin, Cogliano, and Sam Girard. No, not Sam Girard. Logan O'Connor. But only 5 guys have 10 or more goals. It's not a lot. Mikko Rantanen has 32 goals this season. The next closest player is Arturi Lehkonen with 14.
Not even half.
And then you got Makar and McKinnon tied at 13 and Rodriguez at 10. Nobody else has more than 10 goals. It's insane. And when you're looking at points, you've got, Devon Taves has 25 points. That's 22 assists. Some primary, a lot of secondary.
Mm-hmm.
There's 7 guys on this team with over 20 points. It's still incredibly top heavy. So the fact that they can win given this scenario is impressive because, it shouldn't be that way generally. But when you can come out and you can just hammer in 3 goals real quick, you just beat a team into submission and then you just sit back and challenge them to score. It's a good game plan for them. It works.
So are you confident in saying that what they have right now, and if they continue just doing what they're doing currently, that they'll be in an okay spot, or are these still missing pieces? Of course, Cale Makar, you want him back in the lineup, but a guy like Gabe Landeskog, if he never makes it back in the lineup this regular season, are the Avalanche okay?
I don't think they are. I think it depends on where Landeskog is, if they can go out and get a player, if they can go out and get a rental, if they go out and get a permanent piece. Obviously a number 2 center is still a concern. Things have been good, but how much better is this team when the top line with Evan Rodriguez is good. And the second line with Evan Rodriguez at center has been good, right? I think the key component there is Evan Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
And you need Val Nichushkin to make that work as well, really. Outside of that, it's a more perfect world with JT Compher, Andrew Cogliano, Logan O'Connor as that third line pair permanently.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Yep.
It's solid. And then that means you have 3 lines that are hard to match up against. And then the 4th line, whatever you want. Ben Myers, he'll get a goal someday. But I think the issue here, what I wanted to see out of Colorado is how they would do on this road trip. Vancouver had beaten them twice. Vancouver's not good. So that's not the concern. It's the psychological aspect of that game. Calgary was ahead of them in the playoffs. I don't think Calgary has been particularly good. So that's also not it. But it's a bit of how do we keep this momentum going, right? Seattle has been good. 9-2-0 in their last 11 games. Set an NHL record for 7 straight road wins. Beat Boston at home, the first team to do it this season. All of these things are keys into how this team's going to keep rolling. But then you've got the Washington Capitals at home. That's a big game. Anaheim, throw it out the window. St. Louis, flip a coin, right? Those are the kind of things I'm looking at here. But the schedule isn't going to get easier. You go on the road in February after the All-Star break, you've got Pittsburgh, Tampa, Florida. Florida won here. They've been struggling big time, but they have the pieces.
They're a great matchup for Colorado, too.
Tampa has this innate ability to just turn it on and be good when you write them off. Pittsburgh, they've been good. And then at home, you've got Tampa again. Then you go back on the road against Minnesota. You've got some of these games littered in with another St. Louis, another Calgary, Minnesota. Who knows how that game will go? Edmonton. Then you've got Vegas. All of this in February. It's not going to get easier. And if Darren Helm is maybe done for the season or isn't close, Josh Manson, Bo, and Byron aren't until after the All-Star break best.
Those are the 2 pieces I think that really allow the Avalanche to exhale, right? Because here we are, we're talking about Cale Makar's injury. He missed the last 2 games. We've talked about his usage lately and how many minutes. Getting 31 minutes and 39 seconds, I think, last week in one of the losses is just ridiculous. Having those 2 guys in gives you some breathing room and gives you some potency, too, because otherwise you're using, Andreas England, Curtis McDermott. You put a Josh Manson, a Bowen Byram, then you also get some more scoring out of them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. In fact,
thank you.
We saw Cale Makar's ice time coming down, and you're like, oh, finally they figured out a key to doing that. Now it seems more likely that he was hurt and they were trying to take the ice time down to see if he could get through it before having to miss some games, right? But also, you're exposing Eric Johnson, who is aging out, and Sam Girard, who has just not been exceptional in high minutes, to too much hockey, too much opportunity for other teams. So when you get Josh Manson back, you can have a Manson and Girard pairing or a Manson-Byram pairing, and then keep, Johnson and Girard down at your third pair. You have mix and match options. I think Andreas Englund has been fine. I don't know why he's been scratched. Brad Hunt, how do you criticize the guy who has been scoring and providing that secondary scoring support? Those things help. But the way that this season has gone in the NHL and just for the Avalanche, like, no player easily comes back from an injury. It just has not happened. I mean, Evan Rodriguez maybe, but then he dipped back out of the lineup. It seems like every single guy who returns from injury maybe comes back too soon and goes back out again.
I think that's fair. Let's look ahead at tonight. Second night of a back-to-back in Seattle. Another 8 o'clock start for the Avalanche. I saw Pavel Francouz. The camera cut to him last night, and he just let out the biggest yawn because it was already 10 o'clock for him, and he was getting tired out on the Pacific Coast. Well, I hope he's not tired tonight because chances are he's getting the start. The Kraken have won 9 of their last 11 games. And earlier we saw the Seattle Kraken come into Ball Arena and beat the Avalanche 3-2. Your thoughts on tonight? Do the Avalanche have a harder battle in front of them than maybe we anticipate?
I mean, absolutely. Just scheduling wise, it's a scheduled loss, right? If you want to be a defeatist and look at it, like, odds are this is an L, and it's an L that you planned for on the schedule. Now, to come in and finish this road trip perfect and win this game, that's big.
It's above and beyond.
It's big for confidence. It's big for where you want to be in the standings. I think it's also an uphill battle. There were 2 NHL games last night, I think, and Seattle was not one of them. So Seattle's sitting here rested, hot, feeling good. Martin Jones has been on fire for them lately. All the pieces are panning out. You've got the matchup against Burakovsky again. And I dare say that the Kraken turned their season around with that win against the Avalanche at Ball Arena earlier this year. Like, it was an opportunity for them to rise to the occasion, and they did. And what they've done since, I've said multiple times, maybe Dave Haxtell didn't get enough credit from me previously. I didn't think he did a good job last year, but it looks more like it was the roster composition than the players, right? So what they're doing is good. It's great for the organization. It's great for the city. It's not great for the Avalanche. It's going to be a tough test.
Here's the difference maker for me. If the Seattle Kraken are undisciplined and put the Avalanche on the power play, man, that power play is so dangerous, but Seattle is the 31st worst or 31st best team in the NHL at penalty kill percentage. So second to last, only in front of the Vancouver Canucks.
I mean, I guess the good thing is the Avalanche power play has kind of figured it out. They have been bad. They have fallen, I think, in the standings.
Like you pointed out, though, the insertion of Val Nichushkin back onto the power play turns that back into a very dangerous power play.
Yep. I mean, who scored last night? It was Nichushkin.
Nichushkin got one
in the bumper spot. I couldn't believe it. He gets this puck in the bumper spot and he shoots it. It ends up going off of like Tyler Myers in, right? But just to stand there in the bumper spot, this huge dude right atop the crease, and just be left alone, you're like, what are you doing? What is your strategy here? Why would you allow that?
Rantanen's goal was on the power play too, as well. So 2 of the 4 goals last night on the power play. If they can carry that momentum into tonight, I think the Avalanche do win, and they have some revenge on their mind again.
And it's funny to me that you said if they can stay disciplined, Seattle, right? Because I feel like every time a team comes to town, especially early in the season when the Avs had the best power play by far, like what, 24% success? They led the league early in the year. Every coach you talk to is like, well, we got to stay disciplined and not take too many penalties. And I mean, you could go back and look. I bet 90% of the visiting teams took the first penalty of the game or first 2. And you're just like, man, everybody says it and nobody is able to do it.
Yeah, Vancouver, especially last night, they looked terrible at staying out of the box. So Avalanche just too fast. It's tough to keep up with those guys. It's tough to keep your sticks out of their skates and out of their faces, I guess, too.
I feel like I talk about this a bit with Jesse from DMVR up in the press box because we're next to each other. but there's a certain amount of stick play that occurs on the ice away from the puck, away from the play. Little like I give you a little chop in the foot, a little try to slow you down in the legs, a little almost hook, right? These little things, but a lot of them get called as penalties. And you look, whether it's against the Avs or for the Avs, you're kind of like, if you don't put yourself in that position, you don't get called on this. Like there's a lot of it could be flat-footed, and the Avalanche have their speed, and you're like, oh, I got to try and slow them down. But other things are just sort of like gamesmanship type things, like, oh, I'll give them a little whack with the stick, but then the guy ends up tripping, and it becomes a penalty, and you're like, it was unnecessary. It was unrelated to anything.
It's 100% discipline, right? Those aren't hard-working penalties. Those aren't accidental. Man, that's not fair penalties. Those are just boneheaded plays. And against this power play, you can't have them.
And there's good penalties to take. I mean, Calgary, I can't remember who it was, like slashed, I think Val or Mikko's or stick right in front of the net, probably was a goal, probably saved a goal. You take that penalty 100% of the time.
Well, that'll do it for our Avalanche portion of the show. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be right back through the break. We got more to get into. I want to look at some injuries. And, of course, like I brought at the top of the show, the news that consumed the NHL world, Ivan Provorov, and his refusal to wear the Pride Night warm-up sweater. So we'll get into that next. I'm excited to hear your stances on those things. So, Hockey Show, Mile High Sports. We'll be right back. JJ Jerez, Ryan Boulding, Danny Bailey behind the glass.
Let's go, Colorado!
Welcome back. This is the Hockey Show. JJ Jerez, Ryan Boulding. Colorado Avalanche play tonight, as Gilbert Godfrey just alluded to, 8 p.m. puck drop from Seattle. We were going to have Arif on to join us. Arif Dean, of course, he's on the trip. Not often he goes on road trips, so he's really excited to feel like a professional hockey writer for a weekend. And he was unable to join us because he's on a bus ride. He thought he was going to be on a train from Vancouver to Seattle. Turns out he was on a bus. He texts me this morning and says, oh, you remember that train I was supposed to be on? Not a train at all. It's actually a really terrible bus. So I don't know if I'll be able to join you anymore.
How do you not know which mode of transportation you're going to be on?
Good question.
Like you show up at the train station, they're like, actually, since there's only 5 of you, we're putting you on the bus.
All the trains are full. We're going to throw you on this bus.
So then I reached out to Peter Baugh, and he said, I can't do it. I'm on a bus, and I don't want to be the only person talking. And I was like, what, are you on the same bus? What about Bennett Durando from Denver Post? Also on the bus. I'm like, well, if all 3 of you come on the show at once, then at least it's not one person talking.
That would have been a good solution. Like I said, I want to get into some injuries. I think there were some pretty pivotal injuries announced this week. We'll see how long they last.
Hold on. Was that Saliva or Shinedown? That last song.
It was neither.
Wow, look at you.
Who was it?
POD.
I was like, it's not POD. As soon as it came on, it made me think of DU used that Saliva song as their intro for a long time for warm-ups. And then
click, click, boom?
Yeah.
That was just boom.
Yeah.
But I play click, click, boom sometimes on this too.
POD, the really, really unknown but Christian rock band.
What does POD stand for? I don't know either.
I mean, they're Christian rock band, so it could be anything.
They're a Christian rock band, but they sing about some pretty dark stuff.
Well, yeah, they're no like Jars of Clay.
I don't know what
Creed.
you're referring to.
Let's
get back to hockey, Ryan. I don't know
what
you're talking about.
With arms wide open. Yeah, injuries around the league. Let's go.
Max Pacioretty, Cole Caulfield, Sergei Bobrovsky, all looking like they're going to have some injuries to deal with. Bobrovsky really the one that looks like it's going to last the least, but Cole Caulfield out for the rest of the season, it sounds like, with a shoulder. Max Pacioretty re-aggravating the Achilles injury, which, that just sounds so terrible to re-aggravate.
Not even re-aggravate.
Re-tear. Well, yeah, that's pretty aggravating.
Have you ever seen the video on the internet of that? I can't remember. It's like a football player maybe, and they have they put their phone down to record their workout, and they go to take off start stops, and you can see the Achilles snap when they do the takeoff, and you can see it fold up their calf, the whole thing just goes up their leg, snapping, pulling a rubber band tight and then cutting it. It's like that. I can't imagine that it is not the most painful feeling in the world to go through that twice, to go through it once and rehab your butt off, come back, and have success immediately for a team that is trying to run to the Stanley Cup and then do it again. Just awful.
I'm a little bit queasy now. I can't get the picture out of my head that you just painted for us. But yeah, I mean, it's even harder for a guy like Max Pacioretty, who is joining a new team this year. You know that already feels terrible when he's like, oh, sorry, guys, I'm really excited to be here, but I can't start the season yet. I'm dealing with an injury. You get back, you make some noise, and then you have to bow out of the season again. I mean, nothing more painful for an athlete than letting your teammates down, especially teammates that you're trying to grow a bond with, you're trying to build some trust with, and you just don't have the opportunity because your old body is doing things to you that you never thought it would. I can relate, and it stinks, but at the same time, Max Pacioretty's getting up there, right? I mean, I think during the offseason when you saw all these additions, they added Paul Stastny. You said they are not getting younger. They already got one of the Stahl brothers up there. They are an old team. And seeing
Max Pacioretty is 34, which is up there in hockey years.
That's my age. Yeah. My body's falling apart.
What we call that around here in Colorado is he was Darren Helmed.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you see from Darren Helm too, right? He only played 2 games, and now we don't know when we'll see Darren Helm again. So
my theory here, and I mentioned it earlier, is are these guys coming back too soon? Are they not ready to be back?
It's interesting you say that, because literally on my way in, I was listening to the 32 Thoughts. Actually, it was Jeff Merrick's radio show with Elliot Friedman joining him, and they were bringing up Evander Kane, right? Evander Kane makes his return to the Edmonton Oilers this year, and they were talking about how a lot of NHL teams nowadays wait almost an extra month. When back in the day, you'd hear a guy be out for 4 months, he'd make it back in 2. Now you're seeing NHL teams wait an extra month. So I'm with you. I feel like a lot of times players rush back to injury, kind of like I said. They want to prove a point to the boys in the locker room. They want to grow that bond. They want to say, hey, I'm a warrior. I'm here to fight with you guys. But at the same time, I think the NHL has gotten smarter about that. I think the NHL understands the fragility of some of these players and maybe some of the unimportance of the middle regular season.
Fragile. I think Brad Marchand would say something to the contrary. He came back earlier from hip surgery.
Yep.
But I think on a level you probably get on the media side publicly a longer prognosis, a longer recovery time than is possible. That way, it looks like this guy miraculously recovered from this injury. But if we're looking at Gabriel Landeskog, right, and we started the season, they said he's not going to be ready for the start of the season.
Mid-January was the date.
And then, like, mid-October, early November, well, he had knee surgery. So it's going to be whatever. It was supposed to be mid-December, right? Early, mid-January in that window. Now it's not. If you had just initially said April, right, and he came back in January, everybody had been like, wow, oh my God, he's Superman. He's got good hair and jeans. But by setting these weird short timelines that they don't meet, now things seem more dire, right? But it still, to me, begs the question, did Darren Helm look at what was going on with the team, being in this, floating void of, well, it's up to him to say when his body feels ready, and he goes, this team needs help, I'm ready, even though he wasn't. I mean, he had been out skating before morning skates. He'd been out practicing on his own, integrating into practices some for a long time. I think there was a point where he knew, I'm not ready. And then to go out and re-aggravate the same thing you had surgery on, that's concerning. So, you could see it with Pacioretty. Maybe it wasn't ready. Maybe it was, and it's just weak. It didn't take. Maybe his body can't heal that quick enough. But I don't know. It's just seeming like a lot of guys are coming back from injuries too soon this year.
I'm with you, and that's why I wanted to bring that up, because I agree, but it seems like the national pundits, the guys who have sources, the guys who are talking to GMs and teams and agents think otherwise, and that's where I was kind of taken back, because I'm like, it feels like the opposite. And then you look at Cole Caulfield. He was really the one bright spot on that team. Still a young guy, still has a big future. So a guy you need to make sure you're not rushing back, make sure he has the proper time to heal, because a shoulder is something that you can re-aggravate, pop back in, pop back out. And he has 26 goals on the season, too. So basically, Montreal's one bright spot is out, and they are now going to be in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. Might as well lose the rest of the season.
Well, I mean, they were already 8th in the Atlantic anyway.
Yep.
So that's a guy, you shut it down. Like, there is no point in you trying to play through something that you could possibly play through. There's no point in you trying to rush back early. Like, the expectation I saw for Caulfield is that he should be ready by training camp.
Ivan Provorov refusing to wear the Pride Night warm-up jersey sits the warm-ups out. Typically when that happens, the player does not play, still plays in the game, cites his religion and his beliefs for not wearing the Pride jersey. Get into it for us.
Oh, man, I have so many thoughts on this. And it's tough. It really is tough, because he came out post-game and he said, I just didn't want to not be true to myself and to my religion. And he clarified, and I think this is to his detriment, that his religion is Russian Orthodoxy. And now it just feels like anti-LGBTQ hatred. It doesn't feel like it's steeped in any religious belief to that degree, especially with what's going on in Ukraine and the way that religion has played a role in it. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm informed enough to be talking about it, but it comes to this point where you're like, how do you play the game without warming up? How do you get to play the game and not face a team fine or disciplinary action for not wearing your uniform, for not participating in a team event? You know, there are things in place, and I get, you know, John Tortorella is building a culture in Philly, and it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some losing, and you don't see him criticizing the players often. You know, he's done things like take iPads from the bench to get the guys to focus on the here and now. So I understand him going up and defending his player and saying, you know, we had conversations and we wanted to make sure that he remained true to himself, and I respect him for that. Like, everybody in this country deserves free speech, you know, but it is just very weird to have an organization supporting an event like this and have one guy be like, well, I'm going to sit out the support part, but I'm still going to play the game. You know, it's like, no, you shouldn't be playing, you know. Bench him a game. Take him out. They're not even selling his Pride Night jersey or stick in the team auction because they had the rainbow tape and stuff too. They're not even selling that. Like, so now you're saying he's dictating whether or not his jersey can be a part of this. It's more than just being true to yourself at that point. You know, it's a pretty strong statement, I think.
I agree. I honestly, I spent all week long arguing with myself about this in my head because I think there are arguments to be made for both sides. I mean, I'm not saying what he did was right. I don't think he hurt anybody in his actions. But what I don't like about it is that there was a certain message that was trying to be delivered by the team and from these warm-up jerseys. And rather than that message being delivered, rather than the message of inclusivity and acceptance, the night became about Ivan Provorov. And that's kind of what is the bummer for me, is the distraction that it caused. And, you know, who knows the details about it? Some people are speculating that perhaps it was kind of, there's already a turbulent relationship there between Provorov and the Flyers. So maybe he's just trying to be difficult, trying to find his way out of the team. And maybe this is the Flyers' way of being like, you know, you can act up, you can throw a fit all you want, we're not going to react to it. So I think there are other layers to it that we also don't understand. But at the end of the day, you're right. It's a matter of a free speech thing. I understand it's a hot button issue right now too, which I think makes a lot of people uncomfortable and maybe makes a lot of people really react without fully absorbing the entire situation. But what makes America great is the fact that a guy like this can say what he feels. And that's it.
You like to defend that aspect of it. I think the thing that sours it the most for me it's become a hot button issue now for the quote unquote anti-woke mob,
Sure.
right? Now he's become a paragon of the anti-LGBTQ inclusivity movement that the league is participating in. You're seeing right-wing websites like Breitbart take shots at Greg Wyshynski. You're seeing his jersey sales skyrocket following taking the stand. And now, like you said, it takes away from what is supposed to be a night of inclusivity for these people, these fans, these organizations that were present. You know, Scott Lawton and guys have done a lot of work in the community in this regard. And to have that all overshadowed now by this culture war item taking hold and Provorov becoming a paragon of it is the most unfortunate part of the whole thing.
My last thought, and then we'll get out of here and head to the mixed bag skate after a quick break, is if this were to happen with another player on, let's say, Military Appreciation Night, I wonder if we have consistent takes from both sides.
Oh, we don't. We don't.
And that's kind of what bothers me about it.
People have criticized Tortorella for saying, you know, during the Colin Kaepernick situation at its start, like if a player of mine sat on the bench during the national anthem, he would stay on the bench the whole game. Well, then Tortorella walked that back in light of the Black Lives Matter movement and George Floyd killing and things like that to a degree. But now, you know, has it gone so far the other direction that, you know, I don't know. I'm not religious, so I don't know that passion that some people have.
Well, thanks for discussing that with me. It's not an easy topic, and, you know, I knew that I could trust in you to approach it with reason and logic.
And it's hard. You want to take a personal moral stand on it, but you try to be objective and realize it's not that easy.
Right. Which is what made it such a great thing to talk about in the hockey world, right? It generates conversation. Here we are running long. Danny Bailey's looking at me like he wants to strangle me because we have to get to a break. So let's get to it, and then we'll get to the mixed bag skate. Thanks for hanging out with us and hanging out through a conversation as maybe uncomfortable or stirring up emotions in you like that conversation was. But we'll have some more fun here at the end and end the show on a bright note. We won't be back next week. Avalanche play at 1 o'clock at home. So that takes place of our show. We want to end on a good note for the next 2 weeks, and then we head into All-Star break. So stick around for the mixed bag skate right here on Mile High Sports. This is the Hockey Show.
I play hockey and I fornicate because those are the two most fun things in cold weather.
Cold weather here in Colorado for sure. 29 degrees here on this lovely Saturday afternoon.
Heat wave.
All-Star game next week in Florida. I know all the players are going to be excited to be there. Oh, you're telling me, man. You're telling me. We're up against the clock, so let's get to our mixed bag skate as quickly as we can. I know Danny will be generous to us on the other side, but we don't want to abuse his time either. So let's get right to it, Ryan. Steven Stamkos scores his 500th goal of his career this week, and in kind of a predictable sense. But I guess your thoughts. What is Steven Stamkos? What is his legacy going to be when it's all said and done?
I mean, a real. I don't think he was the first overall pick, was he? I'll have to look, but I think his legacy is he met or exceeded the expectations placed on him when he was drafted, when he was a young kid, to go into a Tampa organization where hockey in Florida was kind of poo-pooed. You know, obviously Tampa won a Stanley Cup prior to their most recent run, but just to step into the thank you, Danny, to step into the shoes of the first overall pick and the expectations that come with that.
I'm not sure people heard that. Danny confirmed that Steven Stamkos was first overall.
You look at guys like Eric Johnson, a first overall pick, maybe shouldn't have been. Mm-hmm. There are times where first overall picks maybe shouldn't have been first overall picks. I feel like they land a lot. Maybe takes a while to get there. Look at Nathan McKinnon. But a guy who met those expectations, exceeded them. I saw a quote from somebody that said the thing about Stamkos is when he shoots, he doesn't just shoot. He shoots to score every time he shoots. And, you can maybe say that about everybody. I shoot to score every time I shoot, but sometimes I miss the net by 30 feet. Maybe I'm not shooting to score every time. You know what I mean? Like it speaks to his mentality and kind of his ethos as a player, the way he plays. I mean, the fact also that he had a rib removed because of, an air embolism blood clot issue he was having. and they thought he may never play hockey again, and he has reached this milestone is mind-boggling.
I also look back to the year he was headed into free agency, right? And Toronto was really heavily trying to court him, and he almost bit and decided, you know what, I'm just going to stay here in Tampa Bay. I love Florida. It's a beautiful place. And he stuck with it, and I think he'll always be remembered as, he's going to be the Joe Sakic of Tampa Bay when it's all said and done. I know they have St. Louis. I know they have Vinny Lecavalier, but Stamkos, I think, is the sweetheart of that team. And he's going to be the guy, how we're going to view Gabe Landeskog when it's all said and done, right? Not only did he stick it through, he delivered, and he was an exemplary captain and just did great things for the team.
I'll also always remember the fact that Barry Melrose coached that team for 16 games and refused to play Steven Stamkos as a rookie. And you think about that when the guy scored 500 goals and we're having a conversation with him like this, and you're like, man, Barry Melrose hasn't coached since.
You idiot!
You blew it!
All-Star Game.
You blew it!
Uniforms, speaking of blowing it, were released. I guess your thoughts. I'm not a big fan of having a simple East versus West. Why not give each division their own proper color, especially with the fun colors that you can play with having it in South Florida?
It's hilarious you say that to me because obviously the amount of jerseys that every sports organization has anymore is just outrageously excessive, and it's all for money. And we're in the middle of reverse retro time for the second time in the last 4 years. And we've had outdoor game jerseys and all of these different things that the NHL very rarely ever had.
Just one and done.
1/3 jersey used to be the best you could hope for in the NHL. I think it's hilarious that suddenly there are too few all-star jerseys. But I get it. You set the expectation for the past few years that each division would have their own sweater or two sweaters, and suddenly you pull that away. I like the nod to the old All-Star Game jerseys though. The star shape, you got the NHL logo on it. I don't like the black one. And I feel like the reason for that is it doesn't mesh with the Miami Beach colors that they've chosen to go with, that the neon lights, the light pink and the light blue colors. It's almost too much with that the black and white. But I get that it's a reverse retro. It's a throwback to the old times where there were only two sides. They're trying to harken back to the olden days.
Yep, I got it. And you got to imagine that those All-Star jerseys just aren't great sellers anyway. People don't love the All-Star Game. They love the All-Star Game jersey even less.
I think it's more dramatic is a guy like Barkov doesn't get the fan vote into the All-Star Game in his hometown. But you get some guys from Toronto. You get an extra Avalanche. The Avalanche have 3 players going in. I'm not sure that the season the Avalanche have had to date is worthy of 3 players. I know they're the defending Stanley Cup champions, but...
And not only that, the Atlantic Division decided to go without any defensemen. Remember when we were doing our draft and you were sitting here like, I'm not seeing another defenseman.
Yeah.
And you even brought it up. You said Atlantic Division doesn't have a defenseman. They finished out that roster without a defenseman on it.
Also confusing.
Yeah.
Also confusing to me.
Paul Maurice, coach of the Florida Panthers, fined this week $25,000 for some post-game comments on the referees. Are refereeing rules too sensitive?
Period.
Yeah.
Question mark. I find myself more and more being in agreement with the masses that the head official should be available post-game if needed.
I think you should be able to bash whoever you want in a post-game without fine.
I think some accountability is in order. I understand what the concept here is, right? You want to present a united front as an organization, as a league, so you don't want the criticism of that. But you look at this situation with St. Laurent and Paul Maurice, and you're like, I mean, there's fire with the smoke here. There is something here. And if that guy is not facing discipline behind the closed doors for, a game that was getting out of control, then it's hard to just hold the coach publicly accountable, right? You kind of want to know more. I'll never forget a game years ago, probably 2013, 14, McKinnon's first season maybe, where I happened to be in the tunnel for something, I don't remember. Maybe I was hovering around the x-ray room to see if somebody was coming to get an x-ray in the hallway there. And Eric Lacroix was like pacing back and forth, waiting for the off-ice officials to like be gathered so he could just tear him a new one. I know for a fact that those things happen behind the scenes, but you would like some public accountability for really egregious stuff. And I don't want to hear the bickering. Like, there's so much ref blaming when the Avalanche are losing, when any team is losing in a losing streak. That's all the officials all the time. I don't want to hear that stuff from head officials. I want to hear really egregious situations be answered for.
And you'd hate to see some mob mentality from a home crowd on 3 poor little defensive refs, right? Just ganging up on them physically.
We'll go back to Mikko Rantanen and Cale Makar criticizing the refs on. I can't even think of what that game was now, but they said JT Compher got high sticked in the face. I mean, a player on the other team got boarded into the boards right before the Avs scored a goal on a play directly resulting in an Avalanche goal, and that wasn't called. So it's like you can't pick and choose which moments to be upset about. It's either all or nothing.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into the SB Nation thing. SB Nation getting rid of a lot of their, I guess, local team websites.
26 hockey blogs have been shut down by Vox Media, the owner of SB Nation. It's a sad day for, fan blog communities. I know Mile High Hockey is the Avalanche one. It's gone through some rough times with some of the people who have run it in recent memory, but it was a great place. I think in its heyday, I haven't really been involved with anybody there in a long time, but when I was starting out, I mean, AJ, who is the head hockey dude at DNVR and then some, came from Mile High Hockey, at my recommendation to Brandon Spano. So there was a lot of people doing a lot of good things. There was a lot of community building there. It was a great place for people. Like their game day threads before Reddit was a thing, it was kind of like that was its own community. I never understood. I was always very grateful if I got the opportunity to be involved with them in any way as sort of the independent outsider guy I was. It's just a sad day for all of these people who have put in hard work, all these people in college who are trying to take a step the way that I did, all of these people who are trying to use it as an opportunity to get access and build their portfolios, and the people who really devoted their careers to it on the higher level side. Mile High Hockey is one of 6 that gets to stay for the time being, but I think the writing is on the wall for that setup for Vox Media as it is.
To me, I read between the lines and I see a testament to the death of the written word. Video is king, and I think content just needs a revolution right now in general. And I think we're in the midst of figuring that out as sports media. But yeah, that'll do it. Let's hang them up.
Let's say congratulations to Romy Bean for being named lead CBS Colorado sports anchor.
Congratulations, Romy.
Awesome step for Romy. We'll have to get her on.
Indeed. So, yeah, that'll do it for us this week and next week. So we'll be back in a couple weeks, probably All-Star Week. We'll talk about probably the All-Star Game. We'll see how things go from there.
JJ will be down there shooting video live from Miami Beach since the written word is dead.
He's so offended. The writer is offended. Who would have guessed? Thanks for hanging out with us here on The Hockey Show. We'll be back eventually to talk more hockey with you. Thanks for hanging out. For Ryan, I'm JJ and Danny Bailey. See ya.